bring Kevin Cooney into the conversation. Now, Kevin, we were going to have you on yesterday. Today's better, though, I think.
I think it worked out all right. Yes.
Yes. Would you say that this was a surprise? I mean, because as it drug on a little bit more, were signs pointing to the longer it goes, the more that he would come back?
I'm not totally surprised. I thought that there was a shot, in my mind, Mike and Jeff, I kept thinking, how will they sell a ticket if they bring Gabe Kapler back? And I say that because Kapler was so scorned, and John Middleton is so into feeling his fans and getting a pulse on what they want and all of this. And I just never reconciled in my mind that Kapler could return. The problem I have is the underlying problems in the organization are still there. And so no matter what Kapler's problem was, I don't think he was a great coach and a great manager. And I think he learned a lot. I thought he got better, but he still had serious flaws in communication. I thought in discipline. And I think that's something that maybe he learns from as he moves forward, if he gets another managerial job, if it's in San Francisco or San Diego or whatever. But it wasn't going to work here. And I think I give John Middleton credit for correcting half of the problem. I think the other half of the problem now is what's going to come into light.
Right now,
and that's obviously a general manager and some of the decisions being made at that level.
Now they're going to talk tomorrow. Middleton, McPhail, and Klintak, all three of them. What's the most poignant question that needs to be asked of those three guys tomorrow?
It'll be the Middleton, and it'll be, okay, Gabe Kapler's gone. Why did the other two remain? And that sounds cold and cruel and all that, but I think most would agree it was a personnel issue. And the manager didn't have a lot of control over the personnel he was given. So that leads to the question of the general manager and Mike, look at the state of the system, okay? And I even talked about it last night. Think of the players that they brought in here in the first couple of years, to be the flip guys. Guys that would hold for half a season and trade at the deadline to contending teams with the hope of getting prospects back. The Howie Kendricks, the Jeremy Hellicksons, the Clay Buchholz, Michael Saunders was one, Pat Neshek, all of them, okay? What did you get out of all that? That plan that you basically had for 3 years yielded nothing. J.D. Hammer is the guy who may be the most high-profile guy. I mean, you traded Howie Kendrick for money and Mackenzie Mills, who you then traded for Justin Bohr of all people. I mean, there's serious problems here when you look at the minor league system didn't produce enough that at the trade deadline you could go make a realistic trade for a starting pitcher that could fill one of your major holes. You're not getting a lot. Any major move they've made that's worked, and that's Harper and Real Muto, has been because they've had a bigger checkbook than the other team and was able to take on salary and pay and be willing to pay, obviously, for the high salary for Harper.
So, Kev, if you were to just take your best educated stab at this, outlining everything you just said, which is very in line of what we've said here about the whole process being flawed, not just the manager, why do you think John Middleton retained the two pillars but only fired the manager? Is that an impulsive move, or is there something more to that we can't figure out, or maybe is evident that I don't?
I think, Jeff, that if you look at it, they've gone it was John Middleton who went all in on analytics, okay? And when the organization made the change from Ruben Amaro, it was Middleton who really pushed this idea of modernizing the franchise. And it needed modernization. It needed to get a data R&D kind of feel to it because it didn't have any. kind of structure. I would say now they've almost gone the opposite way, that they're now too analytically driven, that they're ignoring some of their baseball people who have been in the organization and who have helped them build their last great era, through some of the old school baseball instincts. The best organizations are the ones, you'll see it tonight with the Astros. You see it a little bit with the Rays and it's a strange way to say this, but the Dodgers too, that they merge all the data and they can have all the heavy data and everything they want, but there's still some latitude and a little bit of a human feel. And, in talent evaluation, in in-game strategy and all that. I think that's where John Middleton has to find a balance. Now, why he keeps Klentak and McPhail over, and gets rid of Kapler, I think part of it may be trying to balance the managerial end of it with more of an old school feel if they're going for an older school manager. The other part, let's be honest, it's economical. He just paid these guys extensions. And, I guess the question is, he would say he owes them one more year to get this right. It's not often that a general manager will basically have his third manager without making the playoffs, and that's what Klentak's going to have. Remember, Pete Mackanin was a holdover, but Pete Mackanin got signed to a new contract, and then then Klentak brings in Kapler, and now it's going to be a third manager under Klentak's watch.
And it sounds like you think that this manager, and we've already seen names out there, Buck Showalter, Joe Madden, will probably be that kind of guy who will probably have more power from Gabe because they're going to want someone who knows how to balance the analytics instead of leaning so heavily and being kind of a puppet for whatever McPhail and Klentak are shoveling with numbers.
This organization has never hired a big-name manager on its own. Charlie developed in the one, but Charlie was kind of Pete Mackanin was a fill-in guy. Ryan Sandberg was a guy who was a high profile as a player, but was a first-time manager as well. So I think with all the struggles they've had recently, they have to shift to an older school guy. They have to bring in a name. They have to go after a Girardi or a Showalter. If Dave Roberts is out there, it's going to be probably a name you'll hear as well. I don't see Joe Madden. I think Joe Madden's going to end up with the Angels, and I think Joe Madden's not exactly a great fit. If you think that Kapler ran too loose a clubhouse, then Madden runs a real loose clubhouse as well. I don't see them going first-time manager on this because, to be honest, everything that you just went through the last 2 years with the Gabe Kapler growing pains, you're going to go through again. And if that's the point, well, then why'd you fire Kapler? That to me just doesn't work. And I think that they have to go get a big name guy here.
Hey, Kevin, it's Ryan. And, just going back to what led up to this decision, any comments that were released in the media, in the press, articles written about the team and how the players felt about Kapler, nothing but, unicorns and rainbows and positivity. So now you have 10-plus days of Middleton, quote, talking to players, trying to figure out what is best for his organization moving forward. And now here we are today, Kapler's fired. My question is to you, was the stories and the reports of the players loving Kapler false? And if they weren't, what led to the decision then? If he talked to these players for 2 weeks, how the heck did he get here?
Well, let's take a couple factors here. One, Ryan, if you think about it, okay, one factor has to be the economic factor. That they have to, there's a story that when Dave Montgomery was considering the future of Ed Wade, and that took 10 or 11 days as well as general manager back in 2000, at the end of the 2005 season, pretty much somebody in the PR department who's still there walked in and said, you may not sell another ticket next year, another season ticket, if you don't make a change. And that kind of scared David. So that could have been a factor, one. Two, I don't know, I'm not going to profess to get in these guys' heads. I think we hear all these quotes of, all these quotes about we love playing for Gabe, playing for Gabe. Well, if there's television cameras around and there's, if these guys are in group piles where most of those quotes do come from, I don't think they're going to speak as honestly as they would be if you get them away from the ballpark and you're having a meal with them in a hotel or at a restaurant in their hometown. So I think maybe we'll find out. It's going to be interesting. I think as we go further along, and I think tomorrow we'll get a better feel for how people in that clubhouse actually felt about Kapler. The third thing, and I'll point to an article that The Athletic did, I think the final week of the regular season, talking about their pitching philosophies and how they were using analytic data and with their starting pitchers. And it was pretty clear that there were some starting pitchers in there who were not happy with the communication that was coming from both Chris Young and Gabe Kapler. And so, again, I think sometimes we read these television quotes, and Jeff and Mike and you all and Ryan, you've all been there. You see when these guys are around, they try to say the thing that's going to be the least controversial, and you think that that's Bible. That doesn't always happen that way. So it'll be fascinating to see when you get Middleton and that tomorrow talking about those type of circumstances or conversations, what was said.
Kevin Cooney, I want to leave you with this because I find that most people who don't like Gabe, he never had a shot from the get-go, right? He was just a guy that was never going to connect with this city unless he won. I could mention, if Gabe Kapler was a fourth of the 2008 World Series champions, is he as despised as he is by this fan base?
If he was a fourth outfielder? No. If this was Boston, he'd be as despised.
If he was a guy that had Phillies connection, right, if he was on that 08 Phillies team and he got hired, people just didn't want him from the get-go, and as soon as they saw him and heard him, he had no shot. And it didn't help that his first game had a blunder in it, and he could never recover.
And, Mike, let's be fair, it was the first week that had a blunder. The whole week was a blunder, if you remember right. But let's also be honest.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
I put that again on Matt Klentak. That's somebody that doesn't have a feel for the market they work in, and that the positive affirmation style that Gabe had, Robbins' persona around here. Let's be honest. Most guys are going to look and go, "What the hell's the problem with him?" That was never going to work here. It just wasn't. The guys who have always been strong leaders in this city have always been kind of grumbly. They always were, always came across as genuine. You love Brett Brown, correct, Mike? You're a Brett Brown guy, right?
I wouldn't say I love him. I don't think he's the root of the problem. Yeah, I would be more of a supporter than a hater, yes.
Okay, but Brett Brown, I think, connects because he kind of comes more as salt of the earth type. That his press conferences with the accent and everything, he seems like a guy you want to hang out with. Gabe Kapler is a guy nobody around here wanted to hang out with. And fairly or not, that perception was dooming him from the start. And somebody in their front office, he was interviewed by 30 people, somebody in the front office had to raise a big red flag and go, hey, this might not be the guy for here.
Absolutely, and excellent stuff. Kevin Cooney, at Kevin Cooney on Twitter. Follow him there. Mike Kern and Kevin Cooney working the beat. Listen to their podcast. It is really entertaining. They give great insight on a plethora of experience covering Philly teams, and obviously a longtime baseball and Phillies writer here, Kevin Cooney on the Sports Bash. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Mike.